Hi, Black Hollywood Live fans. Today we're talking about Tiger Woods' DUI arrest, the body shamer Danny Mathers gets sentenced, and more today on Justice is Served.
You are tuned in to Black Hollywood Lives. Justice is served.
Hello, everybody, on this last Wednesday or last day altogether for the month of June, month of May, heading into, see, already, dang. Hi, this is Justice is Served. Don't ask us about the date because we can't help you with that. But my name is Chelsea Galicia. I am joined by fellow attorneys Domonique Price and Yemi Abayomi to talk about the latest in legal news. Hello, ladies. How goes it?
Hi.
Everybody knows the date better than I do.
May 31st.
Yeah, you know who may not know the date so well, at least when he was asked the other night?
Tiger Woods.
Mr. Tiger Woods. I think that the first question people might have is, how do you get arrested for driving under the influence when you are found asleep?
Well, that's a really good question. And I honestly think, depending on his attorney, he may be able to get off on this unless the cop can prove that they actually seen him driving the vehicle. Some states, however, require that you cannot even be in the driver's seat. So, word to the wise, if you're going to pull over and take a little nap because you feel like you've drunken a little bit too much, go ahead and hop over into the passenger seat just in case an officer does find you in your car.
Although he did admit that he was coming from LA or going to Orange County, even though I don't really know.
Yeah.
Even though I don't really know where I was. So there's a certain
He thought he was in LA,
Yes.
I guess, driving down to Orange County.
So many things wrong with this story.
You know, he said that he took medication. There was no alcohol involved. In fact, he did blow a 0.0 on the breathalyzer. So as far as it appears, no alcohol. He says this was an unexpected reaction from medication. I have a little bit of like, really, Tiger? You've been on medication probably for a long time. This is your fourth back surgery, and you're just now learning about how medication works. Well, but the other thing is that medication comes with warnings. Doctors tell you, and so when people do this like unexpected, and the thought of Terrence Crutcher came to mind when I saw this case, right? Terrence Crutcher wasn't like asleep in the car, but he was pulled over on the side of the road, and he was on drugs. He was not like really with it. And Tiger Woods too was not really with it. The dash cam video has come out, and he doesn't appear to be aggressive or anything like Terrence Crutcher, not aggressive, but just doesn't seem to be very responsive to the officers when they're talking to him. Like kind of, but like slurring. He's just like not quite right. And so I'm like, if this wasn't Tiger Woods and this was Betty Shelby who answered this call, how might this case have turned out differently? Be that as it may, the medication thing, in the eyes of the law, juries are more empathetic to people who have taken prescription medication rather than alcohol. So then I don't think the DUI charge is going to stick.
It also depends on what state. So a lot of states are turning over to whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or prescription drugs. If they can show that there is an intense use when it comes to the prescription drugs, they will still cite you as a DUI. So because, like you mentioned before, that the label may have said do not drive or may cause drowsiness, if that's the case, he still could be cited. It's just a lesser offense than the normal DUI.
Right, like a reckless
some prescription drugs won't even be aren't considered a cause for a DUI.
Yeah.
So like an Ambien, that's not, even though it's a controlled substance, it's not something that would cause someone to get a DUI.
Right. Although we know that Ambien was not one of the 3 medications. We know that Vicodin was, but don't know about the other 2 medications.
He had some anti-inflammatories.
Which all made sense in having back surgery, so it didn't seem on the flesh of it that he may have been abusing his pain pills. I'm wondering if it was more so the combination that may have given some weird side effects.
It seems like it might have been the combination, but who's in the best position to determine?
Besides you, which one thing I will say is I feel like he's not getting enough credit for him not being pulled over, but actually like being on the side of the road. Well, like, would you really want this man?
He had crashed into a tree.
I didn't hear about a tree.
Was it a fire hydrant?
That was the last time in 2009.
That was before.
Okay.
This time, I believe he literally was just over on the side of the road.
With two flat tires and damage to his front and rear bumper.
Yeah, no, there was damage to the car. I'm like, how did this
Tiger,
car...
I was trying to have your back.
No.
You see it.
The damage
he had a broken tail light. He had damage to his front and rear. Front and rear bumper. He had we know when the flat tires happen.
The officer said that the damage to the car was fresh.
Okay. Well, Tiger.
So that part does complicate it and makes it seem like he's not so innocent, like he just like pulled over.
But it sounds like he fell asleep.
I wouldn't be surprised if whatever happened, however he got to the side of the road, he then while there fell asleep. But at some point he was awake and operating.
He figured, hey, the car stopped.
And operating the vehicle. Something happened to it for it to get two flat tires. So I don't really, for me, it doesn't make a difference whether he was found asleep or not. He was being irresponsible.
It's still pretty dangerous. Yeah. And this, I think, I don't have this statistically backed up, but just knowing from what's happening in the country with medication use and opioid use, like a lot of DUIs probably look more like this.
Yeah. And it's actually something that California is coming down a little bit harder on, and they're really trying to figure out how can you really assess someone's condition if it is induced to pain pills. And I think that's what a lot of counties are trying to figure out. Like, I was actually just watching a documentary, and they were talking about how Washington is now classified driving under the influence of marijuana as a DUI. But it's this whole further question of how do you determine what is excessive use of marijuana the same way that you can with a breathalyzer for alcohol. You can't necessarily do that. So you then have to actually make them go back with you to the station and do a blood test. That takes so long.
Yeah, I have heard that there are two companies working on some kind of breathalyzer or some kind of quick test that you can see if your marijuana use is to like dangerous levels for driving. So I think that's going to be on the market fairly soon.
But and I said that about the marijuana is because from my understanding that's the same way that they're treating prescription pills.
So this is, I mean, I try not
it's
to
new
take
territory.
those medications,
I mean,
but
it's
there are
a whole
people
new
that are
world.
living on those. I mean, he's been having this fourth back surgery not that long ago, and so it's another thing though is like this is not his first rodeo. For him to say that it was unexpected feels a little...
Well, and I think this gets back to my point of I don't know if it's a new cocktail of drugs that they've given him and maybe all together, because I know I've been on medications for after surgeries and they'll tell you don't take consecutively, or if you skip one you're like, oh, I'll just take these really quick, not really thinking it's that bad, and you find yourself sick, and that can be total accidental. I feel
like a normal person, somebody would come down way hard on them, but I look at Tiger Woods, I'm like, dude, why wasn't somebody else driving you?
I think the opposite. I think if it was a regular person, they would get off a whole lot easier, especially seeing as how they weren't suspicious of any alcohol use. I think what you were mentioning earlier about how juries will be more sympathetic to pain pills, I think so are officers.
He wasn't charged the last time he had that
which is a problem, because the
so,
last accident he should have been charged.
So I think in terms of doing this now twice, it's like, okay, you got away with it once. Second time, no, I don't care whether it's alcohol.
But the judge won't look at the last time, or you think they will, because there's nothing official.
I don't think
they
will.
We all know
it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that's not something that you can unknow. So maybe that will seep into their consciousness, and that will be something that comes into play.
So because of the past, it's unlikely that it'll be completely dismissed and won't be anything. But we don't think it's going to be a DUI. We think
I don't think it'll be a DUI, but a lot of, again, to my point that I was making, a lot of states haven't clearly defined what it looks like driving impaired when it comes to pain pills. Like, what exactly are you charging him with? Reckless endangerment?
Probably.
Are you trying
something like that?
I'm asking. I don't even know what the lesser charge would be.
Unsafe driving. I don't know, something like that. I don't know Florida law at all.
I think it would have to be
Shaka, who I think is the only one among us who is
from
barred
Florida.
in Florida, is not here today, and I don't know if he knows the DUI laws in Florida these days. It's not something that they test you on when you are becoming an attorney, at least not in California.
Not that I know of.
No. Okay, so we're just gonna have to leave that one right there and keep people updated as we find out. But I think that the story is probably gonna die down because it's gonna be some nominal something.
But I think
hope
it'll be
not.
interesting.
I think, the consequences could, like in this case, fine. No one was injured. He was asleep. He had 2 flat tires. Anything could have happened where, he hit somebody, a child is killed. I mean, we're lucky that no one was injured in this circumstance, but to kind of let things like this fly by, I think just sets a bad precedent.
Yeah.
I will agree with you there.
That's really true. Okay, an update on a couple police shooting cases where some internal justice, if you can call it that.
Can we call it that?
Hardly. We're talking today about the Tamir Rice case and about Freddie Gray. So we could start with Tamir Rice. So he was a 12-year-old boy that was killed in the park for playing with a toy gun that appeared to be real to 2 officers that just pulled up, and then one of them killed him like seconds upon arriving on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And the officer who fired the fatal shots, Timothy Lohman, was fired this week from the Cleveland Police Department. You might think, oh, okay, this is justice being served in the Tamir Rice case, but his firing actually has nothing to do with Tamir Rice, although it was only because of the Tamir Rice case that he was being investigated deeply-ish, and that is where it was found that he had lied on his application for employment with that police department. Did you think that what he lied about was a big enough of a deal to fire him over?
Big enough of a deal. Lying on an employment application? Absolutely.
Grounds for termination.
100%.
The officer already had the fraternal order of police. They already have something prepared.
Oh yeah, they're gonna
because they say that even if he did do those things, it's not that big of a deal to fire him over.
Well, but I think so number one, lying on an employment application I think is always cause for termination in the first place. But the second piece of it was the fact that the areas in which he lied were actually important. So he said that he had never been fired from a police department. His previous employment, he had resigned, but it only came to light later that he had resigned because he was forced to resign. Otherwise, he would have been fired. He had various disciplinary actions taken against him on his application. He had marked that he had never had any disciplinary action taken against him.
Like he was suspended, right?
Yeah, and I truly think these were key indicators that he may have had some anger issues or just some things that he didn't quite work through all the way at his previous post. And I think they go to his judgment, and I think it was very relevant to firing him.
Yeah, the most alarming thing that I saw is that he had been labeled sort of as like emotionally immature, lacking sort of an emotional, I don't know, intelligence. I don't think that was
which
the quote,
I think an officer needs.
And I was like, that should be something that disqualifies an officer from being an officer anywhere.
He had an emotional breakdown during one of his state qualification
exams.
Tests. Yeah. Yes, so.
I don't understand.
On notice. But so these types of things aren't insignificant things. If I'm a police department and I find out that this is who I have on my staff, there's already enough liability for police departments in this age of, cell phones and video footage, and they don't need to have evidence wide open for them, for them to be caught with their pants down.
Right. I think you have to look at it like, say, for example, if he was a teacher and he was a convicted pedophile and he didn't mark that on his application and they didn't do a background check, but he was at a school, the school would be liable for hiring him if something was to happen to one of those children.
Negligent hiring.
So, exactly. So it gets to the point of now this police station should be liable for not thoroughly having his background checked prior to putting him on duty.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Tamir's mother saying anything. I mean, she did express disappointment that the officer was fired over the lie rather than for killing her son. But she says it will be a step towards, healing and justice. But I haven't heard her, and I hope that she still has an attorney, although she did get $6 million in a civil suit against the department, and that may bar, because it may have just included any other claim, to go after the department for something like negligent hiring, which hadn't occurred to me before you mentioned that. Yeah.
And they kind of are left with no option but to fire him because now they're on notice.
The whole shuffling around, like when an officer does poorly at one department and then gets to just go to another one and another, that's not cool. I don't
really
know
alarming.
how it's just so okay. Nobody wants to be the one that like deprives him of the right. So they're like, you just quit before, you cause further trouble. I'll let you go. You just get out. And then I guess it was, not exactly foreseeable, but that it is somewhat foreseeable that officer is going to have a problem, not only in the department, but dealing with the public, because that's where emotional stuff comes up. So I would be livid if I was Tamir's mother to find out that this was an officer who was on the police department.
Yeah, but I think it just goes back to conversations that we've had on this panel before, and just kind of scrutinizing a little bit more the applications and what it takes to become an officer. I think they just have to do a better job.
Or to stay an officer.
Yeah, like what's that follow-up? What's the psych eval look like? What do you, like,
I have never heard of
mandatory counseling every blue moon? Like, you deal with people and you have people's lives at stake. Are you a whole person?
It's a good question. I've never heard of that. I think they're offered that when they go through an especially harrowing situation, but I don't think they're offered that kind of care just generally. But
I can't speak to that.
That would be a good investment, I think, in law enforcement. My brain went straight to the Trump budget proposal, which increased law enforcement, but not in the way that I think is going to be helpful. All right.
His partner, though, I don't know if we're going to talk about his partner, but the partner was given a 10-day suspension for not following tactical rules.
Because he pulled up too closely to Tamir rather than waiting at the entrance of the park for backup to arrive.
And waiting for backup per department policy.
And so he's going to face... 10 days? Does that bother people? I feel like that's like not even a slap on the wrist. That's like a slap on the knuckle.
I feel like it's hard to say. It's hard to kind of answer, just because a part of me is like, well, let's think about this logically. Had he have followed procedure, maybe it would have given them more time to react and see what exactly he had in his hand, or if he was aggressive, or even in the aim to shoot at them, just little things like that. Like, I do feel like that's what these policies are in place for them to follow. Because, and people hate when you say this, but, officers, when felt in danger, have the right to shoot to kill. And so it's just kind of like, you have to follow procedure to make sure that if you do have to pull that trigger, you've done everything possible before that point.
Yeah, to avoid it.
Yeah, I don't know that this guy could have anticipated that his partner was going to jump out and kill him in 2 seconds. So I agree. Okay, he made the mistake of approaching too closely. I'm sure there are tons of great officers out there who have made mistakes or deviated from departmental rules from time to time. I don't think that all of them therefore need to be fired.
Right.
But I do think disciplinary action is a good thing to see, so that others maybe are a bit more careful the next time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, put onto him the mistakes of his partner and acting so rash and so quickly.
So 10 days sounds fair to you?
10 days sounds...
It's hard. Like, what are you supposed to say? Like, it's all screwed up, like completely screwed. But
what do you think? Something more?
But at the end of the day, you have to think about it. He didn't shoot this young child. His partner did. And so if his liability in the situation was missing that step, and this is what the rational punishment is.
But this is the problem, is that the so then the officer who jumped out and shot, well, he at that point was scared because he was really close to somebody who looked like an adult who had something that looked like a gun, or so he claims.
Because I'm like, that little boy looked like a little boy.
Right. Well, and remember
he claims he looked like a big adult. So I'm just so it's like so it's half of his fault. And then half of the driver's fault, the police officer who drove up to the scene for getting too close.
I wouldn't say half and half.
Okay, so but
by any means.
And
then remember the dispatcher who failed to tell them that this was a juvenile and that the gun was probably
right.
fake.
Who also got some disciplinary action that was pretty lenient, and I probably fault that person the least of the three. But the liability gets like chopped up so many ways that no one person gets held truly responsible. And that's why the public feels that there is no justice, that police can just shoot unarmed people and get away with it.
Well, because I feel like it gets into a way larger conversation. I think if anyone's liable, it's probably the entire department. You can't just say, let's suspend the entire department for 2 weeks. Who's policing your neighborhood? So it's like, we can't fire all of the police, but we do need to figure out what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. What is that training? What is that, what is that re-strategizing your tactical procedure? Like, that's what really needs to happen.
But apparently their tactical procedures were proper. It's just that this guy didn't follow those procedures. And
right.
So that's when,
and so then it's like there needs to be an investigation. Like, does everybody respond like this? Was it just him? Because you know how it's kind of like stopping at a stop sign. Let's be real. The majority of us probably do a quick California stop and we're straight through the intersection. Do we know that it's wrong? Yeah, but everybody does it. So it's not that big of a deal. Police can't act like that. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. You guys don't disagree with me on that point. America, figure it out.
Okay, there you have it. All right, so
I was just looking for some affirmation. She's just like, I don't disagree.
Like, Yemi's like, I'm not going to give it to you.
No, I was like, I needed some
better luck on the next story, Dom. Better luck on the next one. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is a completely different kind of case. So this is the body shaming case. This is Danny Mathers, who she was like Playmate of the Year in 2015.
I'm sorry, I don't keep up with that.
I don't know. I just...
2015 Playmate of the Year.
That's what
she was.
She was in a gym locker room when she Snapchatted a pic of a 71-year-old woman.
Yes.
And commented, if I can't unsee this, then neither can you. She claims that she meant to private message it, but it went out publicly, and the woman was body shamed. The city of Los Angeles charged her, and she has been sentenced for this. What do you guys think of her sentence?
Well, if only we were this harsh on the police officers.
I know, really. No police officer got probation, graffiti removal, community service, nothing of any kind. And this woman, who did take this picture and post it publicly, got 30 hours.
3 years probation, 30 hours of graffiti cleanup.
Yeah.
See, now, I personally think what would have hurt her most is if she would have been banned from usage of social media. How you police that, I haven't figured that out just yet, but I feel like that would have made a bigger dent in her life than her doing some community service that she's probably going to have somebody sign.
Yeah, because that would hurt her probably financially, since social media is used in one way or another.
Right. Just because you're okay with being on social media naked does not mean that the 71-year-old woman does. And it was just rude.
Yes, it was just unnecessary.
It was so rude.
Yeah.
I agree.
So that was her mother.
Kudos to any 70-year-old woman in the gym, like trying to stay healthy and stay fit. I don't get it.
She's our hero.
Wherever you are, we love you.
She was banned from the gym, though.
Okay.
I don't know if that's...
The city of LA made no secrets or qualms about it. They wanted to make an example of her. And so I wonder in her mind if she thinks, well, they gave me something so harsh because I'm famous and they're making an example of me.
No, it was because she was a dumbass and she deserved it. I would also like to hear from the 71-year-old woman and how she feels about this.
Yeah, I won't hold
really
my
matters.
breath to hear about how she feels about it, but I cannot
Somebody
imagine.
could ask her for a comment. They know she is.
Yeah.
It's giving me no reassurance.
Do they know who she is? I didn't realize they knew who she was. Okay.
Yeah, because she was the one who said that she wanted.
She wanted her prosecuted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't even remember what the charge was that she was sentenced for.
Invasion of privacy.
Ha.
She pleaded no contest.
Yeah. At least she knew not to be stupid.
I mean, her Instagram says it all.
It's right there.
That she did it.
You can't deny it.
Her Snapchat.
Can't say I was hacked. She was like in the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But California, they're proposing a new Senate bill that basically gives you a fine if you publish a picture of anyone who's nude or partially clothed without their consent.
Which is very interesting to me because I feel like California is like the porn hub of the nation. And so they post a lot of nude pictures without people's consent. And so I was wondering reading this, like major porn sites. They'll repost.
They're supposed to be paid for.
I know,
images.
but that's like a huge thing right now is that they're publishing pictures to their sites where they don't have the permission of the people in the photos to post. And so I wondered what this would look like if imposed on them as well.
Then they'll just have to get consent from their porn stars. I mean,
and it's not just porn stars. Like there's this whole new thing about like what do they? There's a whole term for it, but it's like revenge porn. It's like revenge porn of pictures that you've had from
your ex's release. Yep.
And they send them in to these big porn sites and they repost them.
Yeah.
Well,
so I think the new proposed law that already passed through the Senate would apply like $1,000 fine and then restitution for the cost that the person took on for getting the photos taken down, which is a easier bet than trying to go about it through like a copyright infringement. Like if you try and take down a picture that because you took the picture,
it's actually easier. It's easier to so say for example, if I have a website, www.justiceisserved, and I post a naked picture of you on the site, it's easier for me to go to your web provider because all I have to do is send them a DMCA claim and they have to take it down and notify you why this particular page on your site is no longer viewable. It's a lot easier for that to happen than trying to get the picture taken down one-on-one with the infringer.
Oh, well, I just got schooled.
Well, I was actually thinking that in terms of the money it costs to get the picture down, it's not so much for the one web, like the one YouTube site or the one Facebook page, but like the viral distribution, whether there's that technology, which I think there is, that can identify images.
They can identify it, but the work to still get them down is still like on a one-on-one basis. And I only know because I've had a few clients where we've had to go through that process.
And it's really expensive.
It's not only expensive, but it's extremely time consuming. So think about how easy it is for a picture to go viral. If a naked image of a celebrity gets posted, it will, within the hour, be on at least 20 to 100 sites. Going through the process of getting those pictures down on all 100 sites that are independently owned takes forever. It's easy to find out where they all are, but really hard to get them all taken down. But if you're going through the route of copyright infringement, it's 10 times easier. Because you don't actually have to find the information for the particular host. You can go straight to whoever their web provider is and make them take it down.
Very interesting. All right, then. Okay. Does this lead us to our final story already?
Already?
I think so. Okay.
Well, we didn't talk about Freddie Gray, but...
Oh my gosh. I missed that one. Thanks for calling me out on it. I appreciate it. Okay. So yeah, that was the other internal justice is not so served story where internally in the Maryland Police Department, 5 of the 6 officers who were involved in the Freddie Gray arrest are being disciplined. I I wasn't too impressed with what and in this case, at least they were being disciplined actually for the arrest that led to Freddie Gray's death. But I didn't see anything that's felt like, ooh, yeah, that'll teach them.
Well, some of them are subject to termination. 3 of them are potentially subject to termination. And the other 2 are facing suspension without pay.
I think we all have to be very, very mindful of what's the word I want to use? What policies govern a police officer and how they have to follow those procedures when in the line of duty, and what those punishments are when you fail to do so. And they're really, really small, guys. And I think that's what to the larger point is, because I think in a lot of these situations, they don't even think about the consequence of them losing their job or potentially, having criminal charges, because it rarely happens as far as discipline on the other end. And when they are disciplined, it's usually, especially if it's their first offense, it's a really small punishment. And so I feel like if we were to revamp that and maybe, it was more than just a paid leave or potential being fired from your job, or if it had a little bit of weight of time served, I think it would cause a little bit more pause and thought.
Yeah, I would agree. I just am feeling a little cynical at the moment that any police department is really going to undertake that, especially at this moment when we have Jeff Sessions, who doesn't believe in consent decrees. So, yeah, I like where your head's at. I just don't know how many people are going to meet you there. Okay, so last but not least, thank you so much for reminding me, because that would have really bugged me if I left that part of the story out. All right, so we have a First Amendment right to say what we want to say, and now a case where an advertiser is suing Sirius XM radio is telling us how much of a right we have to not say something. Kind of interesting. And so in this case, the people suing Sirius wanted to run ads for some dating sites.
Yeah,
some kind of silly
escort services in the mind of Sirius XM. This is seekingmillionaires.com, whatsyourprice.com.
Whatsyourprice.com. Okay, so
which Sirius didn't want to air those ads,
and so then
they were in violation of their policies.
Right, Sirius XM says because they ran the ads at first, and then they re-looked at their policies and probably made sure that their policies excluded this kind of stuff because they don't want it. Okay, fine. And then they were sued for a First Amendment infringement for failing to air the ad that I want. Please tell me all the reasons why you think that this judge in this case, who said, no, Sirius XM has a right to not air these ads, was right.
I think he was right because he was going off of a previous Supreme Court case where it actually dealt with a newspaper not wanting to advertise an actual same-sex ad, which is a little bit different and a level of discrimination there. But the Supreme Court basically said that the journalists have the option to exercise control over what goes into their media pieces, and that's something, whether fair or unfair, is in their control. And I think if the judge was using any one of those previous Supreme Court cases where we've talked about news media, where we've talked about even television ads, that they do have a lot of discretion what they put in their medians. And so I think the judge was right on target.
I think some people may agree with Lara Trump. Lara Trump is married to one of the president's sons, and she commented about this, that the mainstream media are champions of the First Amendment only when it serves their own political views. She says this is an unprecedented act of censorship in America that should concern every freedom-loving citizen.
Well, it's not unprecedented, so I would love for her to do a little research before she speaks on that boldly. But strong and wrong, go for it.
But she's totally, backwards if you just look at what the First Amendment says. The First Amendment says that the government cannot infringe upon your ability to speak except under certain circumstances. It does not say that the private sector must air whatever you want to air.
And I think that that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that your favorite news stations, your favorite newspapers, your favorite radio stations are privately owned. You can't tell someone what they have to put on their programming.
Yeah.
And that's what this judge emphasizes in the decision, saying that the First Amendment is just as much about protecting your right to say something as much as it is to protect your right not to say anything at all.
Right.
And speaking of Trump, this is going to affect him
Yes.
because he has wanted to air ads.
He's currently in the process of wanting to sue CNN, NBC, and
ABC.
Fox News and ABC because he wants to run an ad talking about their fake news cycles, and they've all refused.
He wants to have like a banner over the anchor's faces
they've
or
all
something.
refused to comply. And it really gets back to one of the conversations we've had before about, does Trump really understand how America works?
No. Does he understand the Constitution? No.
Well, clearly him and the rest of his family don't get
Muslim
it either.
man exhibit like 46. Right? Again, this last version of the Muslim ban was struck down for all the reasons that we've talked about on the show about why it probably would get struck down. So, the answer is no.
Can somebody find me some good news about Trump? I just need one morsel I need.
Well, I don't think how about this? All the news is freaking out that he's going to pull us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. The good news is that today, at least, he didn't. That's all I can offer you. That's all I can offer. Well, I wish that we could end this on a more positive,
that was
more
positive.
just
What are you
note.
talking about?
Okay, I guess that's going to have to do it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to tweet at one of us, please do. I'm at Chelsea Galicia.
I'm at Yemi on Twitter and Instagram.
And I'm at Domonique P_ESQ on all social media platforms.
And be sure to join us next week for another episode of Justice is Served. See ya.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Keven Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in.
Hollywood redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.